10 things to know about Tampa in the year 2023. Tampa is a fast-growing city in the state of Florida that a lot of people are moving to for great weather and a better life. With incredible beaches, it's a progressive city that could offer you a lot of great things. On today's video, I'm going to tell you 10 things that you absolutely need to know before you move to Tampa. Number one is YouTube channel having realtors. There's way too many YouTubers on here that happen to also be realtors, and they're going to portray Tampa as this incredible place with great jobs. You need to move here now. But you're forgetting that one, they're just YouTubers, and two, they're also realtors, and they'll make top 10 lists saying the top 10 best places to live in Florida. But guess what? Number one or number two is always the areas where they live, because once again, they're realtors trying to sell you a house, and they want to sell you a house in the area where they live, and they're putting out a very misleading idea out there because it benefits them. So if you're watching a YouTube channel and the YouTuber creating the video saying top 10 places to live just happens to be a realtor in the number one city in that place, I would give you a word of caution. There's way too many of these YouTube channel having realtors out there, and when they make a top 10 list, it usually benefits them greatly. So if you're getting your information about moving to Tampa from a realtor who just happens to have a YouTube channel, I would give you a word of caution that they're probably not being honest about what really sucks about Tampa, but that's why you ended up on our channel. Number two, the good suburbs are actually pretty far from Tampa. You're talking way out to Wesley Chapel or way out to Lakewood Ranch. The really nice suburbs are nowhere near the center of the metropolitan area. So if you work directly in Tampa and you want to live within a decent area, you're going to travel considerably far to find a decent suburb, because most of the urban sprawl, as you will see with the rest of this list, has a lot of problems. Number three, Tampa is a high crime metro. Not just talking about the city of Tampa, we're talking about the metropolitan area. If you never went to school or never learned what a metropolitan area is, please make sure you shut up before you start typing in the comment section. The good thing is some of the worst categories like homicides, murders, are relatively low for the city of Tampa, but when you're taking account crime in general for the whole metropolitan area, Tampa is actually among the worst rated cities in the country. Other Florida cities like West Palm Beach also score very high. Miami also scores very high. Interestingly, all these Florida cities have very low murder rates, so that's good. At least you're not getting whacked. The lowest crime rate metro areas are found in Pennsylvania, New York, and California. For some reason, Florida as metropolitan areas have high crime rates because some of the suburban areas have more crime than the inner cities. Out of 100 metropolitan areas, Tampa came in 18th for the worst crime rate by metro. And this is by crime index. Give you an example, for some reason Tampa's crime index is higher than Baltimore, higher than St. Louis, higher than Birmingham. Crime index by metropolitan area. Usually when you think about crime, you think about the worst things like murder, but we're talking larceny, auto theft, all crime categories combined in that area. As a metropolitan area, Tampa's not doing good. Yes, the city of Baltimore has a higher crime rate than the city of Tampa, but we're using words like metropolitan areas. That's a new word for a lot of you people watching this video. Number four, looting and unrest. You guys remember that one time we had a 2020 and crap just went out of control? During that time period, I couldn't believe how bad Tampa got. I had no idea that underlyingly there was so much potential for Tampa to just loot, destroy their own city. And while most people forgot that stage and most businesses already repair their broken windows, I saw Tampa when this whole thing went down, and it was unbelievable how much looting and unrest was spewed out into the streets of Tampa. And while a lot of people in Tampa are going to deny that this happened, or they're not going to even like me mentioning this, the truth is that in 2020, Tampa was completely out of control. And I never want to see Tampa ever again in that situation. But it happened, it took place, and the city had the potential to basically destroy its own community. That was not cool, and I'm going to throw it on here, and you should know that in 2020, things really got out of control in Tampa. They pretty much destroyed their own city, and the businesses that were here supporting the community were taken advantage of. And I know a lot of people don't like it when I say that, but oh well, it's the truth. It happened, and it's embarrassing. They went as far as burning down a Foot Locker. And by the way, every gas station, every liquor store, every pawn shop, if it was open, it was looted. It was embarrassing. And this didn't happen everywhere in Southwest Florida. It only happened in good old Tampa. Number 5 is a huge homeless and vagrant problem. Seems like most of the places you're going to find yourself in the Tampa metropolitan area, you're going to find an incredibly large of homeless and vagrant people hanging out outside gas stations on major intersections. It's a lot worse than people imagine in Tampa. And they do go from one neighborhood to the next. It's never in the same area. But you should know that Tampa has the potential to be quite a vagrant place. And you're going to find that there's a lot of homeless people in the Tampa area. And again, they disappear for some reason and then come back. But when they resurge, they're everywhere. Number 6 is the OD rate. Hey, maybe the reason the homeless people are disappearing is because they're all ODing. The OD rate for the city of Tampa is actually below the state average of Florida. Now, as a metropolitan area, here we go again, people, the big M word you don't like. As a metropolitan area, some parts of Tampa are just unbelievably high. Hernando, Pasco, just a lot of these counties that are in the metropolitan area, Pinellas, these counties have ridiculously high OD rates, and it's probably why their homeless people are disappearing. I have to take this video on as a metropolitan area because most people moving to Tampa aren't going to end up in the city limits. But it's interesting how nowadays in America, more and more, the suburban parts are actually getting worse than the city limits. With the extension of veterans going into Citrus County, there's people as far as Citrus County now that commute into Tampa for work. That county's OD rate is 81 out of 100,000. Absolutely insane. Manatee and Sarasota counties also have ridiculously high OD rates, a little bit to the south of Tampa, but Hillsborough and Polk County have a lower rate. Number 7 is poverty. Back to the term metropolitan area, the Tampa metropolitan area has a lot of poverty. You'll notice that some areas of the metropolitan area seem like they're still stuck in the 1990s with people driving cars that are outdated, living in houses that are almost uninhabitable. It seems like there's a lot of poverty in the metropolitan area. And while the people that are moving here are a little bit more affluent, they have a little bit of investments, maybe they're getting ready for retirement, they got a little nest egg, not everybody in Tampa has money. There's actually a considerable amount of poverty in this metropolitan area. And if you look at poverty statistics for the state of Florida, you'll see that some of the largest cities that are blowing up, like Jacksonville, Tampa, Miami, have chronically suffered from a large percentage of the population living in poverty, and Tampa is absolutely no exception. You'll go to places like Pasco County where there's mobile home parks out in the suburbs, and you'll see that people are living in conditions that are pretty much almost non-existent in most of the United States. Like the United States has been able to weed out the poverty and things are getting better. People are driving newer cars and improving their lives, except in places like in the outskirts of Tampa where people are still driving around in a 95 Cavalier talking about my food stamp card. Well, I thought it came in the mail, a little paper. Y'all remember the food stamps used to be, you get what I'm saying. Number 8, organized crime. Yeah, in Tampa, there's actually a very strong structure to the streets. Most cities don't have this. In Tampa, gangs and criminal syndicates are actually pretty well organized and very well structured, and that makes it a little bit more complex and difficult than most cities you're going to find in the United States. If you didn't know, Tampa was actually a mob city with the Traficante family. They were Italians, but they used a lot of Cubans and Puerto Ricans. You have a lot of international crime syndicates here, and that's kind of different. Not every city in the United States has that level of organized crime, but the city of Tampa is structurally very organized compared to other cities, and you'll find that criminal organizations here have some type of structure, which just makes them more powerful and possibly helps keep that murder rate low, which is a problem for a lot of cities that don't have structure. Street level criminals in Tampa have the opportunity to jump into the big leagues with stuff like hits on people, hits on government, and sometimes these hits aren't exactly hurting somebody. It could just be stealing something in particular, or who the crap knows. The streets in Tampa move like big bosses. In Tampa, Florida, the guy on the street corner may actually answer to some pretty big dogs. You're a realtor in Tampa, shut up. I don't want to read your comment. Clearly, I know there's going to be realtors that are going to come to this video to say that Tampa's not all bad, just so their real estate YouTube page can be linked onto my video so they can try to scout for customers there. You bunch of miserable rats. This is well documented. I'm not pulling this out of my butt. You can go on the internet and read everything that I'm saying. Number 9, traffic sucks in Tampa. It is the start of the I-4 corridor, one of the most notorious highways in the east side of the United States, with traffic that is completely unbearable. If you're trying to move around Tampa during rush hour, it is unbelievable. I live in the far outskirts, and just up to my exit, Tampa traffic backs up in the afternoon, and I'm like 45 minutes away from downtown Tampa. It is horrendous how far the traffic backs up, and what could be a 45-minute commute at night will be an hour and a half during the daytime. Tampa traffic absolutely sucks in all directions, and if you get caught in the middle of the gridlock during the day, just like any large city, you're going to have a lot of trouble. The fact that Florida has horrific infrastructure doesn't help, and the fact that there's water all the way around Tampa also doesn't help. It makes the traffic have to go into specific areas. It absolutely sucks to be in Tampa during rush hour. Some parts of Interstate 4 heading into Orlando are known to have traffic jams literally at 1 in the morning. Improvements are being made as far south as Northport and as far north as Highway 54 and 52, but in the meantime, it's probably likely that by the time they finish these projects, there's going to be more people here, and then as soon as they finish these projects, they're going to be overwhelmed regardless. Tampa is growing, and that right there is not good in the state of Florida where infrastructure just doesn't matter. Number 10, Tampa is an old city for Florida standards. It's not that old in general, but for being in the state of Florida, it really is an old city, and that means that the core of the city is kind of older buildings. And I don't know if you know this, but places like Phoenix, Scottsdale, Florida, where people are moving there in droves, people are looking for new, nice suburban areas, and the core of Tampa is old and outdated. That's not exactly what people are looking for when they relocate to a hip, fast-growing place. And it also means that's why Tampa has just a huge problem with traffic, because the center of the city is so far from the good suburbs you want to go in. Like, there's places in Tampa where you could drive for 80, 90 miles and still be in some pretty crappy suburbs, especially along US 19. You're not hitting the good areas because it's an older core city. And again, for Florida standards, that's not what people are looking for. People are looking for those new, nice suburbs, and they're nowhere near the city of Tampa. And that's not always a bad thing. It gives Tampa more history, more charm, and more character than a lot of other Florida cities that don't have that town charm. Tampa really has that town city charm. You have the teams, the sports teams. All the other YouTubers are going to tell you this. Of course, I left it for last. Yeah, you got the sports teams, you got the beaches. That gives Tampa a little bit more characteristic that some of these Florida cities aren't going to have. Like Miami, it's a newer, faster growing place. Most of Southwest Florida is newer and growing. And that's good for people looking for suburban life. But if you just need a little bit more of substance, you'll find that Tampa still has that. A lot of people coming from the Northeast in particular come from cities like New York, Philly. They got their food, they got their culture. they got architecture, they got so much substance to them. And when they come to Florida, they think these places are kind of dull. And you'll find places around the Tampa metropolitan area like Spring Hill that are definitely dull and boring. But the city of Tampa itself, places like South Tampa, Ybor City, they still have that character. They still have that substance that a lot of people, especially those coming from the Northeast and bigger cities, are going to want and expect in a city this size. Alright guys, so there you go. If you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe and check out the vast library of content on our channel, almost 4,000 videos. I'm making this video as a reply video to dozens of YouTube realtors. They're uploading videos to YouTube as YouTubers, but they're also realtors. They make these top 10 lists of greatest places to live in Florida, and then they always put the city that they live in as number 1 or number 2. Very convenient. I think it's misleading as well, and that's why I really wanted to make this video to let you guys know that this type of behavior is definitely suspicious. I really feel like the state of Florida needs to implement regulation to where if somebody's a YouTuber and they're giving out these types of informations, that they have to have a disclaimer that their opinion may be kind of arbitrary in some form or another. But in the meantime, I'm here to warn you that this is definitely not checking out with me. And you know, it's probably human nature to think wherever you live is the greatest place in the world, because after all, you made the decision to live there. And another thing that I've noticed that these YouTubers have done is once they pick the cities that are good, they'll put like cities that are clearly not as good in the next order, so that you don't even get a lot of options. Like they'll give you options on that list that are not really clearly not as good as the city they're saying is good. So like instead of a top 10 list of great cities to move to in Florida, you'll get 3 cities that are near where the realtor lives, and then the other 7 cities are cities that clearly aren't as good. They should probably be on the worst list, but they're putting them on their best list so that the viewer kind of leans towards the cities that they said are good, which happen to be where they live. Super sketchy, super slimy, and this is like a premeditated thing that these realtors are doing. Super slimy, bro. This is just disgusting, and that's how these realtors operate. And I really hope that the people that are following these realtors can open up to the reality that you're not getting a clearly honest opinion. I'm not going to tell you not to move to Tampa. I'm not saying don't move to Tampa. I live right on the outskirts of Tampa in some way or another. I could have chosen to end up anywhere in Florida, and I chose to end up here. So that's in some way or another a good sign, right? But man, I'll tell you, I saw these YouTube lists and I was like, wow, this is so messed up. The way they did it is so slimy. That should just give you some type of character witness to the type of people you're dealing with. I mean, if that's like the elementary introduction to these people, imagine what else they got up their sleeves. I would just be cautious, y'all. I see people that were great people right until they turned into realtors. It just has a beautiful way of transforming people. Check it out, y'all.